This family here were very generous with their time on set. I'm glad that they made it into the final cut. And this is our crooner. Our costume designer found this jacket, which I think a sparkly jacket was written into the script, and he couldn't have found that better. I remember this was the first moment on set I felt like I actually had the opportunity to direct the actors. Things had been so hectic up to this point. It was still in the first week. And we had a moment, and in fact we didn't have a moment because we burned through the light and it caused us problems later on, such as the shot of karaoke, which is substantially darker. We had to grade this scene down a lot to have it match because it was still magic hour when this was shot. A lot of work went into the color grade here. The pink in the sky is very much fabricated. And it was just a lovely, still, quiet moment where we were able to play with performance and change the intention, and we got quite a few takes. And ultimately, this take felt like the best balance in terms of mood, and creating the sense that these two characters have just been missing each other a little bit over the course of the day.
Are we all having fun, guys?
Woo! Yeah. Stuff's having fun.
The transition between here was exceptionally difficult, and we finally found our way in via the clapping, which was a relief because we never quite cracked how to get in here, even though unfortunately it means that we miss a performance by those two women of Robbie Williams' Angels, which is what they were singing and what I always hoped to find its way into the film. But some things are lost in service of the greater story. During the rehearsal process, we spent 2 weeks at this hotel, which is the hotel that we stayed at. And we spent quite a bit of time on the stage, just Frankie and I, sometimes with Paul, building Frankie up to this scene. And she really strongly disliked the song, which I think contributes a lot to her performance. And she never did this in rehearsal. I felt very strongly that there'd be a karaoke sequence in the film, and a karaoke sequence that was not very well performed or cathartic, or many of the things I see karaoke used for in films. I wanted it to be excruciating and torturous, which is how I feel when occasionally forced into karaoke. And Frankie struggled with this during rehearsals because she didn't like the song and because it was a little bit embarrassing. But I remember one afternoon, she stood up and I was prancing around on stage singing it myself, which was truly torture. But whatever I could do to help Frankie on her way to this. And she saved it for the night. I remember that day in rehearsal, I think maybe she sang a verse or got halfway through the song, and I knew in that moment she was capable of doing it and that she would pull it out on the night. And she performed this in front of everybody that you see in the crowd. They were still there. And we had 1.5 takes, and she absolutely nailed it. In this moment where the music, that very long outro of this song, and Frankie stays in character is so exceptionally special, and the turn that she takes from this fun, playful activity, hoping her father will join her, to this moment where there is like an innocence lost, you know? For me, this scene early on in the script represented the transition from childhood to adolescence, where self-consciousness creeps in. And once it does, there's no going back. You can't get that back. You can't get that freedom back. And that was something I always wanted to convey in this scene in a way that was really challenging. And whether people take that away consciously or not doesn't really matter. I think there is some feeling of it there. And then the sequence afterward is totally devastating, and the smile that Paul is about to give is the reason that we chose this take, because it is utterly heartbreaking how hard he tries in that moment. This was also a scene that we did a lot of different ways, and Frankie was just exceptional, utterly exceptional, and I was determined that she not look at him here. And yeah, it's just heartbreaking. And then Chumbawamba takes over, as it always should.